That night was colder than I expected for Valentine's Day. I had stopped by Richard's house to help him with a quick errand before he went to meet Tanya in the plaza. They hadn't seen each other in a while because they were both busy, but they wanted to exchange Valentine's gifts and spend the evening together. Richard was a great guy. He always talked about Tanya like she was the piece that completed his life. I never fully understood their relationship, but it wasn't my place to get involved. I didn't plan on staying long. I just wanted to accompany my friend, say goodbye to Tanya, and leave. Richard was beyond excited to surprise her. The walk to the square was quiet, our conversation filled with the usual topics, sports, work, life, but something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness around us. The city was eerily quiet for a Sunday night, almost as if the world had paused. When we arrived, the plaza was no different. A few streetlights illuminated the benches and trees, but there was barely anyone in sight. "Stay a while," Richard suggested. "Keep me company until Tanya arrives." We sat on a bench near the bridge, waiting. That's when things started to feel really strange. A figure was approaching us from the trees. It wasn't Tanya. It was a tall man in a black sports jacket, walking slowly, deliberately. At first, I thought nothing of it, but then I noticed how calculated his steps were. He moved as if he didn't want to lose sight of us. "Do you know him?" I asked. Richard shrugged, unconcerned. "Probably just someone out for a walk." But something about him felt off. He was getting closer now, pretending to look at his phone. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that I was overreacting. My gut, however, screamed otherwise. Richard, oblivious, pulled out his phone to text Tanya. That's when the man looked up and locked eyes with me. His expression sent chills down my spine. It was blank yet focused, like he was analyzing us. Then he approached. "What time is it?" His voice was low, almost monotonous. Richard answered without getting up. I, on the other hand, said nothing. I wanted him gone. The man lingered, standing in front of us for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the other side of the park. But he didn't leave. He loitered like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Minutes later, Richard's phone rang. It was Tanya. "I'm going to meet her on the other side of the bridge." "You coming?" Richard asked. I saw no reason to stay behind. We walked together down the dark path, but I kept glancing back, searching for the man. And there he was. He hadn't left. He followed us a few meters behind, his hands buried in his pockets, head bowed as if trying to go unnoticed. "It's that guy again," I whispered. Richard laughed. "What do you think he's gonna do? Rob us? There's two of us. No way he stands a chance." He was confident. I was not. We reached the bridge, but Tanya was nowhere in sight. Richard checked his phone, frowning. "She said she'd be here." Then, rapid footsteps. I turned just in time to see the man charging at us. Before I could react, something struck the side of my head hard. My vision blurred as I collapsed, unable to move. Time slowed. From the ground, I saw the man grab Richard by the neck, slamming him against one of the bridge columns. Richard struggled, trying to fight back, but the guy was too strong. Blow after blow landed, vicious and relentless. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to move, but pain pinned me down. Richard fought. He tried blocking the attacks, but the man was merciless. Then the final blow. Richard crumpled to the ground. The man pulled something from his pocket. A gun. No hesitation. Bang, bang, bang. Silence. I thought he would come for me next, but he didn't. Instead, he put the gun away and looked around. People had heard the shots. Some ran, but no one came to help. The man disappeared into the darkness. It took me minutes to regain control of my body. When I finally got up, I ran to Richard. His body was cold, motionless. There was nothing I could do. Sirens wailed in the distance, but it was too late. The police arrived quickly, but they were of little help. They asked me endless questions, but I had no real answers. I had no idea who the attacker was or why he had done this. All I knew was that Richard was dead and that my world had changed forever. The investigation took weeks. When the truth was revealed, it shattered me. The man who killed Richard wasn't a random stranger. His name was Reginald Coleman, and he had been hired by Tanya. She planned it all. She wanted Richard dead to collect his life insurance. She conspired with her co-worker, Lenro Ross, who then hired Coleman to do the dirty work. I was speechless. Richard had adored Tanya. He spoke about her with pure love, never suspecting the monster hiding behind her smile. While he planned a heartfelt surprise for her, she was orchestrating his murder. Tanya and Coleman were arrested and convicted, but justice felt meaningless. To this day, I carry the guilt. Could I have done something differently? Could I have saved him? I still walk past that park sometimes. The same empty plaza, the same lonely bench. I picture Richard sitting there waiting for Tanya, clueless about the betrayal that would end his life. And I wonder if I will ever stop reliving that moment. This story is based on the real case of Reginald Coleman, convicted for the murder of Richard Shook on Valentine's Day 2010 at Belton Bridge Park in Hall County, Georgia. Tanya Shook, Richard's wife, orchestrated the murder with the help of her co-worker, Lenro Ross, who hired Coleman to carry out the killing. Coleman was sentenced to life without parole. True horror isn't always supernatural. Sometimes it's the betrayal of the person you trust the most. A love that felt like fate. My name is Claire Lawson, and I once believed in love that was meant to be. What I'm about to tell you is not just a cautionary tale, it is the raw, unfiltered truth of what happens when love turns into obsession, when devotion becomes possession, and when the one you trust most becomes the reason you fear for your life. I met Nathan Wyatt in 2005. He was charismatic, confident, the kind of man who could command an entire room with just a glance. He had an energy that pulled people in, made them feel special, made them feel seen, and I was no exception. I was young, idealistic, and hungry for adventure. When Nathan spoke of dreams, of living without limits, of throwing caution to the wind, I listened. He made me feel like we were meant to rewrite the rules of life together. At first, it was perfect. Nathan encouraged me to dream bigger, push myself further, question everything. But little by little, his words became less about the world and more about how I should behave. If I disagreed with him, it was because I didn't understand his vision. If I wanted to spend time with friends, I was being selfish. If I did anything without him, it was because I didn't love him enough. It was a slow change, so gradual that I didn't see it for what it was. Control wrapped in devotion. By 2008, our relationship was broken, but Nathan wouldn't accept it. I tried to leave, again and again, but every time he would find a way to pull me back, with words, with tears, with promises of change, until one day I finally did it. I packed my things, left without warning, and disappeared. I thought it was over, but it wasn't. Not even close. That was the day my nightmare truly began. The man who wouldn't let go. At first, it was just calls and messages, tearful voicemails, desperate texts. Then, when I didn't answer, the threats began. He told me I belonged to him, that I was nothing without him, that I was a coward who would never be anything without his guidance. And then he said something that sent a chill down my spine. "You can leave, Claire, but you will never be free." I changed my number, blocked his email. It didn't matter, because he always found a way to reach me. One night, while I was in my apartment in Chicago, I got a call from an old friend. "Claire, he's looking for you." She had seen him wandering the streets near my old apartment, asking people about me. That was enough to terrify me. I changed my routines, took different routes home, avoided places I thought he might find me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Then, one evening, I found a box in front of my door. No return address. Inside was a lock of my own hair and a photo of me sleeping, along with a note. "You will always be mine." 3. Taken. I went to the police. They said they couldn't do anything without proof that I was in immediate danger. I should have left the city, should have disappeared completely. But I stayed, and that decision nearly cost me my life. Because on February 14th, 2009, Nathan came for me. It was Valentine's Day. Ironic, really, that the day meant for love became the day of my worst nightmare. I was walking home with groceries, exhausted, my guard finally lowered after weeks of silence from him. Then, as I reached my door, I felt someone grab me from behind. A cloth pressed against my face. A sickly sweet chemical smell filled my nose. I barely had time to scream before the world went black. 4. A prison of love. I woke up bound hand and foot, the air thick with dust and the scent of rot. It was a basement. There was a dirty mattress in the corner, a table covered in rusted tools, a single flickering light bulb overhead, and sitting across from me, smiling, Nathan. "I knew you'd come back to me, Claire," he said softly. "You just needed a little convincing." I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. He reached forward, caressed my face. "Shh," he whispered. "You don't have to talk. Just listen." His voice was calm, eerily gentle. "You belong to me. You always have. The world out there, it doesn't understand us. But in here, Claire, we can be together. Forever." I struggled against the ropes. Nathan just laughed. "Don't waste your energy, sweetheart," he said. "You'll need it. For what's coming." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" I croaked. His smile widened. "I'm going to make you my Valentine." 5. The final escape days turned to weeks. Nathan played with my mind, breaking me down piece by piece. Sometimes he was tender, bringing me my old belongings, reminiscing about our good times. Sometimes he was brutal, shouting, hitting, punishing me for not loving him enough. But one thing remained the same. I was always tied down. Until one day I found a loose nail in the mattress. I spent hours working at the ropes, hoping, praying I could break free before he returned. And finally, I did. I could barely walk, but I ran. The basement door was locked, but I found a metal pipe and used it to break the hinges. As I burst through the door, I saw him, Nathan, standing in the kitchen, his back turned. I didn't think, I just ran. He heard me, screamed my name, chased me. But I did something he didn't expect. Instead of running down the street, I threw myself out the second-story window. 6. Love that ends in blood. I hit the ground hard, glass slicing into my skin. I screamed for help, and this time, someone heard me. Nathan tried to run, but the police found him hours later, covered in my blood, screaming about how I had betrayed him. They arrested him, and I never saw him again. But his words will haunt me forever. As they dragged him away, he smiled at me and whispered, "You will never be free. Some love stories end with forever. Mine ended with survival.